Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to QuickBooks Labs. QuickBooks Labs, a monthly and more than that in a moment, podcast designed to be in the place to learn all about the world of QuickBooks and other accounting software. On the first Wednesday of each month, we'll hang around these microphones to talk about all your latest news. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Patrick, a chartered accountant, owner of an accounting firm called Buffett, a QuickBooks certified UK trainer, a fancy new logo just up there, and also that QuickBooks chap on YouTube. Join me as always is my one and only co-host, the one and only Ash. How is it going, Ash?
Oh, good, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, me, Ash Beetson, bookkeeper / accountant / QuickBooks trainer / software developer. Back over to you.
Cheers. So today we, as always, got a cracker for you. But first, bit of a public service announcement of some changes, some big changes to the way that QuickBooks Labs is going to be brought to your ears going forward. Well, first of all, we've listened to all your feedback and comments, and we are going to make sure that going forward, we have a much more of a regular time slot. So as I kind of alluded to in the intro there, going forward, we're going to move from a fortnightly podcast to a monthly podcast, with the idea then that each and every first month, so first Wednesday of the month, we'll be here waiting to give you all your same news, same information, and same details about how QuickBooks is going, but making sure that we're on a more regular time slot. So that should help you if you want to come and join us live, because we know how sporadic it's been going forward. Also, it should mean that once a month, fingers crossed, we'll always have good topics to go through and talk about and give you some insight on what's going on. So hopefully that is a good news for you. Also, throughout, keep an eye on both our channels, so both mine and Ash's channel, because we may just drop a once in a while special video coming up, special live video. If there's anything major that's been announced, or if anything we want to talk about, or if we've got a special guest that we want to talk through and talk about, then we'll just bring them on a sporadic basis. Keep an eye on that Facebook page, keep an eye on the social channels, and you'll be able to get all the information you need. So let's go through how this all works then. So first of all, we are live to the world, as I'm sure you're well aware, at our regular time of 4:30 UK. That's 10:30 US Central Time. So if you're listening to this back at a later time, then why not think about joining us live? Because now we're on a more scheduled basis. Remember, that first Wednesday of every month here at 4:30. That way you can get involved in the show and ask us anything you like in that chat box, and we can discuss them and bring them into the questions. And I'm sure you'll use that as a way of making sure that you'll keep us honest and get those burning questions over to us. Furthermore, we're now live on the podcast services around the globe, so feel free to subscribe on the podcast service of choice. Ash, what is the agenda for today's show?
Well, topics for today, Aaron. UK recertification ended. What has happened to import styles? We can change the order of reports in management reports. Changes to custom fields. There's a new bank import screen. Some new direct debit options available. And then we'll also have a little chat about, burnout maybe over the last sort of 18 months. And then our little tip of the day, the send later option in QuickBooks Online. But before we go through those, I have the pleasure, we have the pleasure of being joined today by the one and the only Mr. Charlie Khan. So would you like to bring Charlie in?
Hello, Ash. Hello, Aaron. How are you?
Hello.
Welcome, Charlie. So I know you pretty well, Charlie. We've met a couple of times. If you'd just like to give our listeners and viewers a little intro about you.
Yeah, so I'm a chartered accountant, been one for more years than I care to remember. I'm a QuickBooks advocate. I've used Xero as well over the years, but now very firmly on the QuickBooks side of things. I have a small practice based in West London, and I've been in the past, in the sort of 15 to 20 years I've been using QuickBooks desktop and then online. I got very involved with Intuit. I was been on their council and various other things. So I've been quite involved at various times in hopefully trying to evolve QuickBooks in a nice positive way. And I've currently got a group on Facebook if anybody wants to join that. It's I I think the easiest way to find it on Facebook is, I'm looking it up now, what's it called? QBOA UK, so QuickBooks Online Accountant UK. You don't have to be in the UK to join it. Very welcome anybody from around the world. All we ask is that you answer the 2 quick questions on it. So are you an accountant in practice? Do you use QuickBooks? That's enough for you to join the group. But come along there and ask questions and join the conversation.
Highly recommend it as well. We've got some quite interesting conversations over the last past month alone, wasn't it, Charlie? So yeah,
great.
Highly recommend it.
Little video chats on it as well every now and then, but we should do more of those.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, Ash, so we get straight into our first topic then.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, so this is a bit of a public service announcement more than anything else. You've heard us drumming or banging those drums on about recertification for the last month? Has it been that? No, it's been 2 months now. It's 3 months almost.
Yeah.
Recertification for 2021. So if you weren't aware of it up to now, it's too late, unfortunately. But in a real quick nutshell of what happened, if you've already, as an accountant, gone out there and got yourself a core or advanced certification, then you had to have recertified by the end of June to be able to keep your certification. And the thing to remember as well, that is now going to be an annual commitment. So going forward, every year there'll be a recertification coming around. And that means every year you've got to get yourself ready and waiting to be recertified going forward. And we've been promised we can actually put some more complicated questions next time, which will be good, won't it, Ash? So with the recertification, if you haven't got yourself recertified as at this point, then unfortunately you'll have found that you've lost the ability to call yourself a core certified. And what that basically means is that you'll have to go through either core or advanced one more time to go forward. Gents, what do you think to that then? Do you think, let's change the conversation a little bit more. Do you think recertification is a good or bad thing? Go for it.
Well, it's a great thing, isn't it? Because if you're listed on that Pro Advisor page, you should be keeping up to date with the software. No question about that. Because otherwise, a prospective client that's reaching out to you is expecting you to know about the software and what it can do. And if you've not been kept up to date with it, then you can't really answer the questions that they come through. So it's an excellent thing, I think, and a long overdue. And yes, the question should be a little bit more difficult next year.
Charlie.
No, I think I agree. I agree with what you just said, Ash. Whether the questions need to be more difficult, I'm not sure. I mean, I think because there'll be plenty of people who I would think is reasonable for someone to be considered, pro advisors and even advanced pro advisors who perhaps maybe they're in a slightly larger accounting firm. They've got staff who do more of the day-to-day stuff. For them to lose that simply because they don't know some very subtle facility that even somebody who uses it regularly may only use once in 6 months, I think maybe is a little bit excessive. I mean, as long as you've got a basic understanding of what the product can do and you're aware of the new features, I think that's definitely important, that each year they bring in some issues that relate to the new features. And they do as they did this year. I mean, when I actually left it very, very late. I think I finally got around to certifying about 4 days before the deadline shut. But it wasn't difficult. But there was a PDF document that mentioned all the new features that was helpful, and I kept QuickBooks open at the same time so I could check some screens. But it didn't take very long and it wasn't very difficult. But yeah, I don't think the questions need to be too hard. Just bring in some of the new features, I think, is important.
I think the only reason we mentioned that is we some of the questions we put forward were turned away because they were too difficult for it. So maybe we'll get a few of them in next time. So
you're just mean and cruel, aren't you?
Yeah. Exactly. It's like the good cop, bad cop. We're on the bad cop side.
Definitely. But no, I think you're completely right there, Charlie. And it is a good thing. It is, it's right that we keep ourselves up to date with it. It's right that we get ourselves in the right mindset for it. And it's good to learn about all the new stuff as well, because I think it has forced a lot of people to see what has actually happened in the last year. And it has been a really, really good year for innovation for QuickBooks. It's going to be interesting what is next year. It'd be difficult for them to top it, I think. And one of the things we do on the show that's went down really well was we did a little look back at the end of the year. We'll definitely be doing that again But it'll be interesting to see what kind of gets put on there and what features have gone down well when we come to the end of the year. So yeah, definitely interesting. My next news topic, though, is unfortunately a very, very sad topic. We've actually gone to the point where I'm going to share screen so we can show this, but we've actually lost a feature in QuickBooks that I can't remember not being there, if I'm honest. I think the first time I ever logged into QuickBooks, this feature was here. So if I'm just going to share my screen now, just so I can show you exactly what I mean. So on screen now, you should see that we have a typical QuickBooks license, and over here is my company cog, and under the Your Company section is a really fancy name here called QuickBooks Labs. I don't know if anyone's noticed that one before, but within QuickBooks Labs, there was a feature in here that's been there since day one, and that feature was import styles. And the idea of import styles was it gave you the opportunity to be able to bring in any type of invoice that you wanted. You basically got a Word document. So if you've got an invoice you've been using for years and years and years and years and years, and you wanted to continue that exact style, that exact layout for your invoice, then you were able to import it into QuickBooks and carry on using it till day dot. Now, unfortunately, when things get taken away from QuickBooks Labs, normally that means they're now ready for prime time, because the whole point of QuickBooks Labs is it's an area where you can have new features in there, which you can play around with, test basically for the developers, and it's not going, it normally sits there waiting to go. Now, the import styles option has been there as part of the QuickBooks Labs thing since literally day dot, since I think must have been the first one they ever introduced into QuickBooks Labs was the import styles option. Unfortunately, I have to say now it has disappeared, and it doesn't look like it's made itself into the product, which is crazy in my eyes, because it was one of those real great features that, especially if you're using some of the VAT schemes and things like that, it was actually a really useful feature so that you can keep yourself compliant and make sure that your invoices were exactly how they should be. What do you think, Cash? Charlie? Is it sad?
Well, I just looked while you were talking, Aaron.
Yeah.
And I just looked at my other screen, and it's there for me. If I go to, sorry to dispute the pearls of wisdom pouring forth from your mouth, but if I go to custom form styles,
yes,
and then under the new style button at the top of the screen, I've got import style, and I click on that, and I can choose invoice or estimate.
Yes. Have you turned it on in the past?
Yes, exactly.
That's a good point. So let me try looking at a client. That's a very good point.
And that's exactly it. So you still have access to it if you switched it on. So on mine, I go to custom form styles, I go to import, and I do have the option to import style just there. And in fact, this is a little bit different to what it looked like. So it's like maybe in the back end, they've done something a little bit different to it, but we have lost the option to turn it on a brand new client.
Oh, that's interesting, because I've never actually, I mean, I've clearly played with it when it first came out a few years ago.
Yeah.
But I've never actually used it for real. I've never ended up using it. Yeah, I've just looked at the clients, and yeah, when I click the new style button, it's just the other three options.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Wow.
And it's not in your QuickBooks Labs, is it? You can't go and turn it on if you wanted to.
That's a good point. I haven't looked in there. Let's have a look. Let's go back into that client again. But yeah, so that seems crazy that if they're able to keep, if they got rid of it for everybody because it didn't work for some reason, I can understand it. But since it clearly works, it seems bizarre not to, unless they're going to bring it in live and they've just had a gap between Labs and live.
Maybe because they haven't released their summer what you call it yet. So they're what's going to be announced for the summer quarter. So maybe they've held it back for that release. Is a possibility that they want to bring it in from there. But Ash, can you remember how long it's been in QuickBooks Labs? I mean, I would
say it's probably a good about 6.5 years that it's been inside the testing zone. That's a long time to be tested and get some feedback on something. I mean, it was a great tool. It was a little bit buggy. Yeah. So sometimes you'd try it and then it wouldn't work. You could do exactly the same thing and then it would work. I was always under the impression that it was because it was in labs, it was never sort of fully supported. So if you did have an issue with an import, Intuit would try and help you, but basically they said that could always guarantee they would be able to fix your problem because it's not a standard feature.
Yeah.
That was always the bit of a pain with it, I always felt.
But that's the risk of using QuickBooks Labs, isn't it? You're a beta tester, aren't you? So
did either of you have many clients? I know you don't work with clients so much these days, Ash, as now you're an app developer and guru. But have either of you had many clients who actually used the
yeah, so again, for me, it's when it's VAT compliance reasons. So the best example I can think of is if you've got a margin scheme client, for example, and you don't want to show the VAT, but you want to have the adjustment and you want to put on the transaction.
Yeah. Well,
having that option was a lifesaver because without it, there's no way of not showing the VAT. So yeah, it'd be interesting. It comes to a point where we might not even be able to have QuickBooks as a recommended software for margin scheme at the moment. We'll have to see how that goes. So,
wow.
Yeah. Oh, having said that, Aaron, just thinking about that. Do the invoice sales always show as net?
So if you use the gross scheme, you'll be absolutely fine. But if you've got it on an individual transaction basis, then ideally you want that calculation on each individual transaction. So that's why we used to use that as a way of being able to create we basically just got rid of the whole VAT thing, and QuickBooks didn't seem to mind. So yeah, you could produce an invoice, and on the transaction itself, it had all the VAT breakdown you needed. So yeah, it'll be interesting. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it is one of those things that comes in. And this is something that we'll come on to in 2 points time, but maybe it's part of the advance for the UK. Maybe because they need features for it. Like if they're going to release advance to the UK, they're going to need to bring features in so that we can utilize it, basically, won't they?
We can be tempted to spend more money.
Yeah, exactly. Because to be fair, that would be a reason for me to upgrade. So, just to bring in some comments from John. So great to see you there. Curious to see how many users use the feature, and maybe demand isn't what we think it is. I like the feature, but never used it, and that is exactly probably the reason why it's gone. It's just an odd one, isn't it? How it just goes completely. I wonder what the resources or anything it was like just to leave it in labs indefinitely, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. Ash, over to you.
Over to me, right? Okay, so in management reports, I shall share my screen. Let me go to share screen. Sure, I get the right screen up. There we go. So it used to be pretty painful. I'll just pick one of these standards. Let me just go pick up this standard management reports here. So when you're running through your reports, you have them all shown in this particular order. And in the past, if you wanted to change the order of these reports, the only way you could do it was basically go into the report, delete all the reports out, and then put them back in the order that you wanted. There's been an improvement on this now. If you go to the advanced section, when you're in the management report, you go into advanced, and then you have the ability of reordering by basically dragging these reorder pages options up and down. It's not perfect, so I have given a little bit of feedback on, it's great, it works, does the job, but unless you know it's there, I was only told, we were lucky because someone at Intuit gave us the heads up and said this is how you could do it. But if I was I would never have, it might have taken me ages to have spotted that, because I think, I never needed to go in there before. So it would have been nice to have basically a link at the top of this page that says reorder. I would have thought that would have made more sense, but that's just me, to reorder the report, put the link there and not in the advance. But anyway, what do you think on that one, Aaron?
Yeah, what I like about it is the fact that there's been a lot of momentum in the reporting side, because reporting in QuickBooks has always been strong. Like, that's one of the things we're lucky with, because we have lots of great reporting options in QuickBooks, but it's never been perfect, has it? There's still been some frustrations there. There's still been some things we can't quite do. Like charity always springs to mind. That is always one of the ones where I've always had to, try and butcher it to as much as I can. But I think the fact that there is quite a lot of focus on trying to streamline that reports process with the working papers, with the performance center, with this, with some of the other, the fact that we can now change the names and things like that. I think we're definitely going in the right direction. I think that's got to be a good thing for the reporting. Now, management reports, I don't use them as much as I think I should do. I think it's one of those ones where we kind of just use the basis ones, and we very rarely make any adjustments to it. But this is definitely going to be something that will probably make it more appealing to adjust going forward. What about you, Charlie?
Yeah, but like you, I don't use them as much as I should. I think they brought this in as a sort of half-hearted thing some years ago, because Xero made a big play about their management reports when they launched it, and they were there was the one thing that Xero did in reporting that was good, because I agree with you, Aaron. What you said earlier is QuickBooks reporting, I think, has been far ahead of any other accounting product. It's been absolutely superb. But kind of the ad hoc reports, you run a report on the fly, whether it's based on one that exists there, and you tailor it, the ability to customize it, save your customizations, filter it, all of that's been way ahead of any other product in the marketplace. But Xero did have their very good management reports. And what was nice when Xero did it, and they made a big play at all the sort of events I used to go to that Xero did in the early days, was that these reports weren't even visible to the client. So you could produce these beautiful looking reports, send them out to the client each month literally at the click. I mean, you'd spend a bit of time the first day you take the client on setting up the reports, but thereafter each month you just literally push a button and out these reports would go. I mean, assuming you'd done the preliminary work. The client never saw where they came from, and you looked like you'd spent 2 hours producing these detailed reports from every month and charged a nice fee for it. And when QuickBooks launched it, they made it available to clients as well. So I said to them, well, you're kind of missing the whole point of why Xero were doing this. It was to allow accountants to look really impressive to their clients, and provide real value to their clients that the clients couldn't get for themselves. If you're showing the client that they can do this themselves, then the accountant hasn't added any more value than the time it takes to press a button. So that, in my opinion, was a mistake. But other people would argue that it should be transparent. But anyway, it's
I think you're right. And what I do like as well about Xero's approach is that whole publish unpublish idea. So the idea that you're asking, that you're requesting them to go into product to see the report, to interact with it. That would be a lovely addition to QuickBooks, to get the client to come in, because we keep even now getting requests. Can we have a breakdown of XYZ or whatever it's going to be, and if we can keep forcing clients to just, here it is, but it's forced them into the product anyway, then it should kind of get them to the point where they just get them themselves if they need that particular report.
I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah, that's a good point, Aaron, because some people do struggle just to log in, and it seems absolutely insane. But I was although I've pretty much wound down my accounting activities, there's like one large business I help pretty much on a weekly basis, and they've set up like another little company, and I sort of got him all logged in, and I just knew he'd logged in like once before about 3 years ago, and I sort of thought, are you actually going to start logging in here now and looking at stuff? Because I said, all you need to do is click on that. He said, oh, how can I actually look at an invoice? He goes, don't tell me, I'll click on suppliers. And I thought, well, you worked out how to do it. And I thought, but really, in 2 weeks' time, will he do it? That, it's the question. But anyway, we'll see. I closed that one down. But just coming back to me a little bit, I love management reports, and I started using them from the year dot, when they were first sort of released. But I do get Charlie's point. I didn't really get my head around why it was released to everybody. It should have just been an accountant only tool, to be honest. My only other little sort of pick up on this was, this has got how many sort of six report pages. So the one I use that gets sent to a bank every quarter has got 14 pages. And I sort of struggled to sort of change the order because you couldn't see all of the things here properly, when you were changing the orders about. So that's a bit of extra feedback on that, really.
Just one more on that. Do you think they'll ever bring in performance center into management accounts?
I hope they do, because again, as because the performance center is great because that's an accountant only tool with all of the lovely graphs that we can create. But the fact is, you can't really do a lot with it unless you just dump it into a PDF.
Yeah, well, Performance Center isn't, though, is it? Performance Center is client and accountant. It was the old overview, wasn't it? That was
performance.
Performance Center is for clients as well. Thankfully, that dashboard is available to them. It's that old. If you remember that old overview screen, that was the accountant's only one.
All right, okay, I'll have to double check. I thought that was accountant only as well. All right, my mistake on that one. But yeah, I don't understand why. Yeah, it would help if some of these could be brought into the management pack, but I can appreciate from a programmer's point of view that it's probably a complete nightmare trying to actually work that one out because of all the different variables that's probably required to do that. All right, changes on custom fields. Now, I only noticed this the other day when I was just digging around doing a bit of testing. So when we've been able to create customer invoices, we were able to create additional fields, up to 3. And yeah, in QuickBooks, so for an invoice, you might want to put customer purchase order number on, or sales rep as an extra field.
Yeah.
But now within, you've got your lists area. If I just come into all lists, I noticed that within, I'll give it another click, with all my lists, custom fields appear down here. Mm-hmm. So I go into the custom fields, and I've got the ability of creating, new fields in here. Now you're still only limited up to 3. But what you can do, you've got this nice little view. So if I were to, click to edit this, you can choose whether it's going to be available to be printed or not, whether you're going to use it on purchase orders or not. And if I just save that now, so you can see you've got a little icon there that says that particular custom field, it'll be printed. So when you email it out or you print it off, it'll be visible on there as well. So I think that there's 2 sides to this, in fact. So you've got that on there. So you've got a sort of better visibility. I don't know if I include it in active. Yeah, I did. So I tried to make sort of 5 or 6 custom fields to see if I could, but it will only let me have 3 at a time. So you can, add and create them, and then you could have to make them, inactive if you want to use just the 3. So I'll come to the next section of that. So what's the feedback on that one so far?
Well, for me, what gets me really excited is it looks very similar to the American look. So on the American screen, they get an extra feature on there as well, where they get to choose their data type as well as their field. So in fact, I'll quickly show you.
Is that not only in the American Advanced version, though, Aaron?
Well, it's a bit of a weird one because here is the American one, and you get to select this data type here. It wasn't just in the advanced one at first; it was in the full version, but I think it has now moved just to advanced, hasn't it? But the fact that now this is looking very similar to what Ash has just looked. So let me just go quickly back to Ash again, meaning that hopefully that gives us an opportunity to bring that back in as a similar feature. So that gets me excited because I think that'd be a really useful addition.
Right, you Charlie, do you use custom fields a bit?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I use the standard ones. PO reference, PO number is the most obvious one. Yeah, I do use them. I remember, going back some years when I used QuickBooks Desktop. I can't remember if there was a limited number of custom fields, but there were certainly a fair number you could stick in there. And I remember the functionality I used to get on QuickBooks Desktop to run reports that would provide all sorts of information that had nothing to do with accounting whatsoever, but was related to accounting transactions, which I found enormously powerful and very useful. I remember I looked after a lot of musicians, and I had a musician who was regularly touring, and I had a custom field that had details about which tour manager was involved in which tour, and all sorts of information would appear on my QuickBooks reports, which was very useful for the client because that was one of the key things that she wanted to know. So this kind of stuff I think is great. I watched a bit of a video the other day from America on QuickBooks video on YouTube when they were talking about the advanced products, which I think you're going to come on to shortly. But and that's where I saw that they were really advancing the custom field thing. So I take your point, whether this will remain as additional fields in the Plus or all the standard products, or whether it will only be in an advanced product, I don't know, but it's definitely welcome.
If I just pop into customers, which I'm going to, there's a project, I'm going to change that field down. Just come into customers. There we go, all customers. If I open up a customer and just come to edit a customer, something else I spotted here in a tab as well, custom fields. So within here, we've now got to get more custom fields basically with advanced. But at the moment, if I were to click on learn more, I get a little message that says, oh, you can't actually do this yet. So I won't click on it because that's just all that happens. But I think that's, like Aaron's just said about the sort of probably the later sort of move into the advanced options. That's, things that will come because we'll be able to have those probably different custom fields, for different customers. But going back to your point, Charlie, I guess, I do remember on desktop, helping clients that must have had, probably 8, 9, 10 custom fields. But I suppose you can do the similar, using a tag if you wanted to. You could stick it for a different tour instead of a custom field. You can still report against the tags pretty well now.
I just clicked on that link that I hadn't spotted that field you just shown on your screen there, Ash, but I've just brought that up on my screen and clicked on learn more, and it's brought up says we can't upgrade you quite yet, but the phone number is a US one, so they clearly just use a link to the existing American version of Advanced.
Yeah. I'll close it. Anything to add on that one, Aaron? I think you sort of covered it a bit, really.
Yeah. I'm just excited. I think it's gonna be exciting for custom fields to get their extra functionality, because it is one of those bits where when you've got a client who uses it, then actually it's really, really useful. We have clients who use it for things like sorting out their commissions and everything like that, where location and classes just don't quite fit for them. So having the option to be able to make sure that the data they put in there is correct is going to be really beneficial to them. So I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, shall we move on to the next topic then, Ash?
So changes to the bank import screen. So
this one's a really subtle one, so we won't spend too long on it, but it's just been making people aware, really. And it's one of those ones where it used to work really, really well as it was, but now they've come and they've changed it slightly in the way that you import your bank data. So if you aren't able to get your connection working for whatever reason it's going to be, then we do have the option here now when we upload from file. We've got a different layout to what it looks like. So I've got a bit of a squash screen, so it's a little bit squashed over here, but it does look better on a less squash screen. But as soon as we now go and get the file and we try and bring the file in, we then get sent to another kind of newish screen where this is the same functionality as before. And then once we've continued from that one, just a bit of a better layout, I think, to the way that it looks here. A bit better in the kind of questions they're asking. So we're making sure it's a row over there. The 2-column questions now higher, so I think that should be more apparent to people when it was before. And what date format is exactly the same, it just changes a little bit more. Once I press continue, then you'll get exactly the same view as before. Although I have noticed that it was automatically not pressing continue for me down there, which is odd, isn't it? So looks like you have to tick them now than you didn't have
Yeah.
to before. But apart from that, it's pretty much exactly the same, but it's just interesting that they've got a bit of a different layout for it. I'm not sure there was anything majorly wrong with the old one, but an improvement's an improvement, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a subtle improvement. It sort of threw me a little bit on the last advanced certification course I ran. So come to this screen and thought I'd pressed the wrong button because I didn't know what I was doing to begin with. Go through the usual motions and then think, oh, I don't really know what this screen means. Try and work it out on the fly. I think some of it I'd say it was maybe a slight improvement on what was there, perhaps for people that have never done it before. So I can appreciate if you've never imported a screen or never imported a bank file and you're not quite sure on what you should and shouldn't do, then it's basically really holding your hand a little bit more. So I guess I can appreciate that. And I suppose initially, I thought, why is it not ticked anything? And now, but I sort of thinking about it in sort of two ways. That's probably not a bad thing, because if it ticks everything and you import it, I shouldn't have imported that, but you can undo it anyway. But then an inexperienced user probably doesn't know how to undo things if they've put it in. So I guess if they've got a year's worth of statements, but they only want a month, then they can just look through and think, oh, actually, I only want those sort of 30 days, and they'll tick the ones that are there. But yeah, it's I'm not blown away, but it's all right. What can I say?
Yeah.
What about you, Charlie? Do you need to use this much, Charlie? I mean, hopefully we don't these days.
That I don't use it?
Yeah.
At all?
No, I do use it. I do. Why did you say hopefully I don't, Ash?
I know. Hopefully, you don't need to use the import tool too much because.
Oh no, exactly. Once it's set up,
Yeah.
I mean, I've got the same frustration that everybody does, which is not Intuit's fault, but this 90-day thing, which is a pain.
Yeah.
I'd mind less if there was the ability that Intuit could just send a message, a flag to the bank, so that I could say, for example, because a lot of my clients are relatively small companies, they might be turning over a couple of million a year or something. But it's just the owner of the business, the sole shareholder, who's got access to the bank. If that could just send a flag to them, so when they open up the app on their phone, they can say, "Click here to renew your link for 90 days with QuickBooks." That would be easy. So with one of my clients, what happens is every 90 days, I have a 10-minute Zoom call with him, and I take him through it on the screen, because he never logs into QuickBooks, doesn't want to. So I get him to click the relevant things and fill it in from my screen with him putting in his codes over Zoom, which is a pain.
Yeah, I think the good thing is that banks are starting to clock on of how important that is. So Starling, I know, is actually does it the other way around. So Starling will say that, you come into the end of your 90-day period with QuickBooks. Do you want to reauthorize it? So it's them pushing, not QuickBooks. So I think that's going to be, it's going to be a big ask for all banks to do it, but the more people and the more ways we can get that interaction, the better it's going to be, isn't it? So
yeah. The other thing on the bank feed that I would love to see, and I think, does it happen in the States or maybe I know? I think was Brad talking about this? So when he was with you, Brad Simonis, when he was with you on a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, was the ability that I think in Canada, where they send a PDF bank statement through as well through the bank feed.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, what we're not really reconciling to anything.
No.
We're just saying, well, and the problem is, the figures don't always match because on the bank feed screen, because if there's transactions, let's say they've been on, most of us don't have checks anymore, but you might, for example, have a debit card payment that's gone out in the last day or two. So you've posted everything that's on the bank feed, but it doesn't still match. That doesn't mean you've done something wrong. It could just be that there's a couple of debit card transactions that haven't yet hit the bank feed, but have affected the closing balance. So I often wait till the weekend and then check it then, because then any leftover debit cards would have filtered through by the Saturday or the Sunday, and then it can match. But but it means you do have to ask for the PDF statement at least at the year end as something to match to, and it would be nice if that could come through on the feed.
Yeah, and were you aware when it used to do that? So I was part of the NatWest beta for it for open banking, and that's what they said. So I want to say QuickBooks Connects ago, that was one of the things they were trying to push for why open banking is going to be so good and why it's going to be beneficial to you and your clients. And that was one of the benefits, is the fact that, and at the time it just brought forward those PDFs for you, so that when you went to reconciliation, you could just use them, and it worked brilliantly. So yeah, fingers crossed they can get that one back. I know it's going to be bank by bank basis, isn't it? And it's going to require kind of for the banks to be up for it. But I think, like you said, it's going to be huge, isn't it?
Well, the question, I don't know whether it's so much a technical difficulty. I suspect not. I suspect it's more that the banks are only willing to give away whatever data they're required by law to give away, because they don't want their customers using other facilities to. They want their customers logging into. If you can do, even if you want to remain with HSBC, for example, if you never log into HSBC because everything else is getting all the data elsewhere, HSBC lose an opportunity to sell you more products.
True.
And they want you to log in so that they can sell you insurance and loans and whatever else they want to sell you.
So I wonder if this is why Revolut and who they partnered with, is it one of the other cloud accounting software, why they're getting into such a deep connection, is because and partnership is because
ClearBooks, was it?
ClearBooks, that's it. Yeah. So I suppose that's so that they can start doing all the selling and everything else in product. I assume. I think that's because that's ultimately where it's going to go, isn't it? Where you're going to have much more of a tighter integration, and that's going to give them the opportunities not to lose out. So interesting.
But of course, the founder of ClearBooks, of course, has now gone on and launched a product that's both a bank and an accounting product in Counting Up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting, those ones who are doing that, where they're building account, and we were talking about it last time, weren't we, about it, account and bookkeeping at the same time. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on that one, especially for with MTD coming around, and you've got your rental properties and everything. If they can just get a solution where it's all in one, I think there's definitely going to be a cry out for it, because it's going to be huge for some people.
Very much so.
And then the next topic that I've got, really, really, again, small adjustment, and it's just over here. So I'm on a recurring invoice just here, and with this recurring invoice, I have the option to do use direct debit now. So the reason this brought into play, and if this is going to be for people who have had the same pains that I have, if you use Go Cardless and you use recurring invoices, then in theory, it's absolutely amazing. It's like one of the best integrations you can get for QuickBooks. The idea is that you can set it up that if you've got a direct debit, a Go Cardless mandate for QuickBooks set up, then you can use recurring templates, so that each and every month, then QuickBooks can raise an invoice, send that invoice to a client, and automatically collect that money for you without you doing anything, which is absolutely brilliant for people who have subscription-based models and everything else. The only problem with that is, in just like for me, is I would like it so that, and for my practice, I need it to have the ability so that it can create that idea of creating that that invoice, but I do need a 10-day grace to give me a chance to go in and maybe edit the invoice slightly, or maybe, add a service on, take a service away. So what we do is it gets created on the 1st, but doesn't get sent till the 10th, giving us that 10-day window. Now, the old way it used to do that was the fact that if you make any adjustments to it and you didn't click the right button and you didn't put it around, it either wouldn't collect the money for you, or it would collect the money early, which is not ideal in both situations. So they've now given us this option to use direct debit here, and that should give you a way of making sure that when you send the money, so it's also here in options. I've taken them on a screenshot, to be fair, but you don't just get automatically send emails, but you also get an option for DD and to bring the DD in there as well. So a really subtle change, which we haven't tested fully yet, but this could be a really good way for us to be able to make sure that going forward, we're going to be able to make sure that if you are using direct debits, because you've got to be sensitive with it and you've got to be careful with the way that you deal with that in QuickBooks, but it should make it so that there's less errors and problems coming forward. Which means that one, actually, you use Go Cards a little bit, don't you?
I do, yeah. So what was the main change? Because I mean, that the use direct debit dot's been there quite a while in the recurring. Is it because you've now got an extra tick box in there for use direct debit?
Yeah, I took the wrong screenshot because I did it in a rush.
Just
But there is an extra one now, so it gives you that extra option now. Where because before it used to be send later, wasn't it? And now you've got the direct debit or it's something like that. I'll try and get the new screenshot and bring that through. But yeah, it is a way forward. But we've not been able to test it properly to see exactly what it does. But it should be a lot better for us going forward.
Yeah, it should be good. Cool. I suppose before I go on to my little tip, which is about sending later, actually, so that's a nice little segue in there, Aaron. Thank you very much. I just happened to spot on Accounting Web, when I was thinking of little topics we could talk about, was a burnout over the last 18 months. And when I read through the article, how many accountants were just deciding to sort of chuck it in because they can't cope with all of the furlough claims, the different loan repayments that might be required, and all the sorts of things. Luckily, I pretty much jacked it, the whole accounting thing in about 2 years ago, or probably 3 years ago now. So I love clients dearly, but sometimes I prefer not to talk to them. So I do, I sort of empathise, I guess, with a lot of accountants. I've not had that sort of struggle. I've had a handful of furlough claims that I've done each month for really friends in business, just helping them out. Not had to do a lot of volume, so this hasn't really affected me on a sort of stress burnout. I'm pretty laid back here, actually. But I suppose I'll come to you, Aaron, first, because I know you've got a fairly large sort of client base. How's it really affected you over the last, and how have you sort of coped? What's been your sort of coping mechanism?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me for coping was actually realizing what was going on. So deep within, when we really got into the lockdown, and it was all about trying to firefight and trying to keep your clients and trying to give as much support as possible, I went through a stage where not only was I not leaving the house, but I wasn't leaving the top floor. So I went through like days on end of not going downstairs because I was constantly trying to get information out there and talk to them and trying to get clients up and running and try and figure out their furlough calculations. And it was just a whole mess during that time. And I think it was a realization at one point about how much extra work was being put in there, and realization, of how much you keep just churning the same thing and keep going and going and going and going and going. It just isn't healthy and just doesn't get you anywhere. And the realization for me was I was on a call with ICAW's kind of small practice committee, and it was that point where I was like, oh yeah, I've not been downstairs in 2 days. It was kind of that sort of realization, and I think that's the sort of thing that you need to kind of be aware of. And I think we're going through a stage, and we've definitely done it in our practice, where we were doing furlough schemes and everything else, and we were trying to put on all this extra work to help clients, but at the end of the day, we weren't having those extra resources to be able to put in there. And I think what we've learned more than anything is that whole idea of resource management and task management and everything else is so critical. And what it's kind of done for me is kind of make me think, with everything that's going to change going forward with MTD and the fact that we're going to be coming into this whole idea where we've not got one return to file every year. We've now got 5 returns to file for clients. And that realization that as accountancy, we're going to be even more task driven and even more focused on these tasks and ticking these boxes and everything else. And I think it's just given me that kind of that idea of thinking about, right, okay, how do we make it so that it's it's a pleasant working environment, and it's not just this list of tasks that we've got to do each and every day and tick through. And I'm really starting to kind of look at that and look at ways in which we can do it. I'm definitely not there yet, but it's in my back of my mind of a critical, like, somehow I've got to find a way to make it so that team members aren't just sitting there with just this pile of tasks that are never ending. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. but it is definitely a topic that needs to be brought up and needs to be talked about on a more regular basis, because I think as a profession we're going to be changing massively in the way that we deal with tasks going forward. What about you, Charlie? Any bits your end?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, you mentioned not only lockdown but also MTD. I mean, I think coming along as cloud has become a lot more normalized over the last 5 years. I think pre-cloud, it would have been lockdown would have been much would have been almost impossible. And I guess that the subject, less of lockdown, because we're now coming to the end of that, and hopefully people have all got through it. No doubt many people had struggles at various points, but hopefully people have got through it now. And looking at MTD, I don't know if you saw a piece I was asked on Accounting Web a couple of weeks ago about MTD. I was asked to write something in response to a comment or a post that somebody else had written about MTD, and they'd focus on the fact that MTD meant that businesses were going to be paying their taxes 4 times a year, and the revenue, we're looking at payments 4 times a year. So I wrote a piece saying multiple payments a year got nothing whatsoever to do with MTD. Let's look at the positive sides of MTD. Let's just yes, of course there are lots of things that are problematic with MTD. Most obviously, the fact that MTD for income tax is going to impact tiny businesses with turnover of only £10,000, and that's an insanely low threshold. I mean, putting the threshold up at perhaps VAT registration threshold would seem a sensible place to go. But the point is that I was making was we should be looking at the positive side of things. So bringing that into what you've just been talking about. I mean, I think whilst one would never want to have gone through lockdown, I think it has taught us all a lot of things, and we can change the way we do business moving forwards for the better. I mean, the most obvious of which is it's now pretty common for businesses, and a lot of businesses have said that moving forwards they'll continue to do this, of having staff work from home. I think Deloitte's have said that they're going to have almost all staff can choose to work from home all the time if they want to. I think in practice all the time may be a little bit excessive, but I think this will change work-life balance for the better for most people, as long as businesses allow those people that want to go in and work in an office with other people, they can do so. But I think the future looks positive, and I think that the hell we've gone through in the last 18 months could yield a lot of very positive things to move forward with.
Yeah, it's definitely shifted our conversation. Also. Yeah.
I was just agreeing. You know,
that's a rarity. Agreeing with me, anybody agreeing with me is a rarity. Yeah.
But okay, so I'm sort of not really in the equation as such, but so I mean, you've had a lot of stuff to deal with, both of you, over the last sort of nearly spoke about 18 months with all of the stuff, all the clients that you had to help. So what do you do then to try to sort of switch that off? Because I can imagine that sometimes, because everyone's different, you know, when I used to work in industry, and it was a fairly sort of stressful job I was in at the time, sometimes I would go to sleep thinking about it and dream about it, and then wake up thinking, oh God, how am I going to do this? Can I really face going into work? How do you sort of turn that off? Or do you, or can you?
Well, I think the reality is, and it's one of the good things about being a practice, or not a good thing, but I think it's one of those things that you get a benefit with your clients when you are a practice owner, and you've got that kind of element there, because you don't turn off, and you never will turn off as such, because there's always going to be a client issue. There's always going to be something there, but that's exactly the same as what your clients are facing, because the reason most of them have gone into business is so they're so passionate about whatever it is they're doing. So they're constantly thinking about, you know, innovating and changing things and bringing things through and everything else. And I don't think it's the end of the world that, you know, you don't officially, quote unquote, switch off. But I think you've just got to find ways in which you can just make it manageable for yourself, because, you know, you can't, all the changes that I would like to make to my practice and everything else, and all the changes I want to keep pushing for my clients and all them sort of conversations, none of them are going to happen overnight, and they're not going to happen straight away. So I've just got to set expectations and manage those expectations, and find a way to be able to kind of deal with those task lists, like I was saying, in a more manageable way, so that you don't feel burnt out by it. But I think as long as you've got opportunities to wind down every now and again, like the best example is football tonight. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to complain if I don't get back to an email during the England game. That them sort of things is exactly fine, isn't it? So I'm not going to beat myself up about it, and I'm sure my clients wouldn't expect anything else. So, you've just got to set those expectations, set those boundaries, and I think you'll feel more comfortable for it. But again, I hark back to that awareness, though. As long as you're aware of it, and as long as it's something you keep bringing to the forefront and you keep thinking about it, I think half the battle's done. What about you, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely harder to switch off. I mean, if in the days when you went to an office for whatever hours you did in the office, when you came home, you would switch off, because you didn't normally, even if you had a phone with email on it, you didn't tend to look at work emails. So I'm going back a few years now, but nevertheless didn't tend to look at this stuff, so did switch off. But one of the first things that I learned to do, certainly with emails, once you started, it became common to have them on the phone, and also on the computer, is to switch off. And it seems to be the default with a lot of these email programs. Is that it pops up a message that you've got a new email, or your phone will ping when switch all of those off. That's my biggest advice on these things. When you want to look at your emails, whether you look every 5 minutes or every 5 hours, that's up to you and how you work with your clients. But you decide when to look at your emails. Don't have the thing ping you when you've got an email, because likely as not, you've got a new email every 30 seconds. What's the point of knowing that? I know I've got new emails since I went on this, since we started on this video call this afternoon. I don't need to be pinged every time one came in. I know there are emails there, and I will look at them when this is over. So that would be my biggest advice on that. Stop being pinged.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Charlie. And in fact, I removed a few apps off my phone a while ago. I removed Twitter and Facebook, and turned off the notifications on my emails, because I was just you can get hooked onto basically holding your phone all day. And what I've also started doing is, I actually leave my phone in my office at night. So otherwise, because if I go next door and if I'm feeling a bit, fidgety, I might just pick the phone up and just look at rubbish on you just start scrolling through, and I don't need to do that. I can talk to the family instead. So I do try to leave the phone in here and just completely switch off from it.
I know, speaking of phones, I know that one of the big features that Apple announced at WWDC, and I think at the time it was a bit like, what's the use of it sort of idea, or like a lot of features, it's like, what's going to be the benefit of it? But they're bringing in kind of profiles, as in kind of what time of day it is will determine what your phone can do and can't do and everything else. And at first, again, felt very gimmicky, but I think that's exactly what is needed, isn't it? It's the idea that you set how many hours you want to be in work mode, and that's your phone effectively is then a work device, and it tells you your emails, and it tells you, any other bits that you need to know about it. But then as soon as those hours are done, it kind of switches, and then it's just on stuff that's important to you outside of work. So I think technology is going to play a huge part in that, because as great as technology is, data and everything is so accessible now that it is so easy just to be completely focused on it and being consumed in it all the time, isn't it? So hopefully technology can help us on the way back on that one.
We're just running 2 minutes. I'll just go straight into that little tip, and then we also wrap things up. Let me just share my screen.
There it is.
So you mentioned earlier, Aaron, about the send later option. So when you are creating an invoice, and not everyone knows this or understands exactly how it works, because there's a little tick box and it can be overlooked even though it's right there. So there's just a little benefit of this for anyone that's never used it. If you do put a tick in that box, send later, I'll just save and close that. So what you could do is you could raise throughout the week or on a particular day, you could raise a load of invoices and put a tick in that box, send later, because you might want someone else to look at them and check them first before you actually hit the button. So if I went into my sales and just looked at my invoices here, what I should be able to do, or is it going to be in my all sales area? Now I've just come in here. Then I go back to my all sales. If I come into all sales, I can filter this list. So if I were to just tick those for example, I could filter that to the status, to the delivery method, even send later. I know I should have checked this earlier before I demoed it, and then applied it. Apply. So I can put that filter on, send later. So I just, a few minutes ago, just created those two invoices, tick the box, send later. So now somebody else could do that, filter that report, and you can also create some sales reports with a status in there, send later, as well, if you wanted to do that. But then you'd be able to go in there, check them. Then if you were happy, you'd be going to your batch actions and then, send them off. You can send transactions, email those reports off. I don't know if you ever use those at all.
Yeah, I like them.
I don't use those.
Yeah, we do. We like those ones for, ad hoc ones that we might be kind of generating a invoice for, and we've not quite done the work for it yet, or we've not quite got kind of the kind of bit for it yet. But that's a great way of making sure that we can keep on top of that and send it. And it does work really well. So, and I think it's one of those things where people don't use that screen enough that you're showing there, because that screen can be really, really important in terms of making sure all your invoices have been sent and the status and everything else.
Yeah, cool. What about you, Charlie? Is it something you use much, or any of your clients?
No, I mean, I do have a client who tends to create invoices as drafts, but he creates them as an invoice, and then will go back in and change them before he sends them out. And that sort of caused slight problems for me, because we were never quite sure when we were doing reports for him, which, whether it was final or not. So I've tried to persuade him over the last few months to create them as what does it call them?
Estimates.
As estimates, thank you.
Yeah.
To create them as estimates and then turn them into an invoice, which is, it's essentially doing exactly what he wants. And he's sort of usually remembering to do that. But I've tried to reinforce that once he's created an invoice, it's a valid transaction, and he can't. I mean, he can change the detail around if he wants, and but he can't change the invoice date or the amounts or the VAT. That's what I tell him, because most of the time, if you haven't sent it, arguably you can do that, of course, as you've just been describing. But there's no way of knowing whether it's been sent or not unless you use the send later button, and that's yeah. But I prefer the estimate version rather than the send later.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? And it works really well with estimate as well. So
yeah, very well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just before we do the final bit, just to clarify, I found that actual screenshot. So really quickly, that's what the new subscription payment box looks like.
Oh,
so
yeah. Cool.
We've now got this area here. Subscription payments just there, look. And then select the subscription payment to enable subscription payment model for your recurring invoice. That's what I was trying to show before.
Do you have to create a certain type of invoice for that, or is that any recurring invoice does that?
Yes, recurring invoice should pop it up. It's weird how it wasn't popping up on that first one I did, actually. So I still need to do investigation of when it pops up, why it pops up, and else. We did reach out to QuickBooks, but they haven't come back to us yet to clarify it.
I haven't. Is that it's not live for everybody, is it?
No, it should be. Yeah, it should be. As long as you've got Go Cardless connected, you should see it there.
Yeah, I've just looked at one here. Maybe it's taking time to spread out, but I'm looking at a recurring invoice, and I've got the let customer make payment and use direct debit on the right, but I've just got the automatically send and print later. I don't have the subscription there. Interesting.
So maybe it's gone again. Maybe that's why I couldn't see it when I was trying to show it then. On that.
Maybe so. Maybe it's one of these things that rolls out for some and not others.
I'll reach out and we'll come back to you on that one next week. And with that, then, Ash, do you want to?
So don't think we've got any further questions
Nope.
in there at the moment for today.
Brilliant. All right, then let's do the wrap up then. So just a normal bit at the end then, just to make sure that if you are listening via podcast, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook so you can join us live in a future episode. Ash, I'm going to put you on the spot here. When are we back?
We should be back, Aaron. Be impressed. I am ready. Wednesday, 4th of August at 4:30 p.m. GMT UK time, which could be 10:30 a.m. US Central time.
Perfect. And again, that's our new time slot. So the first Wednesday of every month, we are here for your listening pleasure. Ash, finally, have you got any videos planned for next week at all? Should we be looking out for on your videos?
I may have one or two. I've got a few bits and bobs to do, so I've been a bit lax on my video creations over the last month or so because work's got in the way, unfortunately. But we'll see. I've got a couple of ideas for some extra tips. I've not sort of decided what to do yet. What about you?
I've got a plug actually for the one I released yesterday. I did a reaction, so it's a bit of a new style video for me, but I did a reaction to a Zero fangirl who's to put a video up there, and she was explaining how wonderful Zero is. So I reacted to my thoughts to that video. So yeah, definitely an interesting one to watch. It's only a couple of minutes long. And also we've now got another kind of podcast type thing as well. So the going concern. So if you've got any kind of questions about wanting to become an accountant or anything like that, then Thursdays at dinner time, come and join us for a little chin wag about that one. Charlie, have you got anything you want to promote, push, anything that you've got coming out, or any other accounting web stories or anything?
No, not particularly. If anybody shares my view that MTD isn't all bad, by all means stick a comment on. Okay, look for me on Accounting Web and see that article, because I got about 90 people telling me I was talking out of my rear end. And I'm thick-skinned. I don't mind. I got some support from various relatively senior people in the profession telling me that thank God somebody wrote what I wrote. But so by all means support me on that, and come and join my Facebook group, QuickBooks Online Accountant, QBOA UK is where you'll find it in Facebook. Come along and make contact.
I must check out the Accounting Web, and I'll give you some support on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% MTD.
And me. I love it.
We'll give you support on that, and everyone should really, because at the end of the day, we want to get the positivity out there, just as Charlie perfectly said in the last topic. And do get over to that Facebook group as well, because me and Ash are there, and obviously Charlie as well. So get some conversations going, and we'll go from there. All right then. So I think that is then just a goodbye from me.
Yeah, just say thank you very much, Charlie, for joining us this afternoon. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Really, really appreciate you coming along. And with that, hopefully we will see you in just over a month's, or just under a month's time, isn't it now? So yeah, our new time, Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month. So the next one is the 4th of August. See you there. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you all soon. Bye for now.